Hello everybody, I'm Brett McGowan, writer-creator of Changeling and Urban Fairy Tale, community outreach manager, and head of public relations over at the Mythoverse, and I'm here to bring you guys a new series on our YouTube channel. Now, as the name suggests, we the Mythoverse here are kind of inspired by old folklore and mythology. And what I want to do here is a series that delves into all those different stories that helped inspire our comic books. Now, a quick bit of disclosure before we go any further. These videos are not going to be super in-depth. I want to make these quick, easy, and above all digestible. So I'm going to be covering the topics in a more broad and general sense. Going to do research as best I can, but really want to be able to keep these videos short and to the point. So with that out of the way, what's the best topic to start off? Well, seeing as how I wrote Changelings seemed like a good place to start. Now, what exactly are changelings? In the broadest sense, they are a fairy creature from folklore that is primarily found in the British Isles. However, that is not the only place they're found. Changelings also pop up in folklore from Spain, Poland, Germany, and Scandinavia. And there's even a legend that the Igbo people of Nigeria have. I will put the name of it down in the video because I'm not going to try pronouncing it. However, we'll say this though. Its connection to the changeling myth is kind of only a name only. The name roughly translates to changeling, and that's pretty much where the similarities end. Now, what's the basic premise of a changeling? Changelings are fairy babies that are swapped with human babies, and the human baby is abducted by fairies. Common tropes that appear in changeling stories are a young couple find out that their newborn is out of sorts, and then they realize that it's actually not their child, it's a fairy baby that was left behind. It's a changeling. Many of these stories will feature one of the parents, or maybe even both of them, going to the fairy realm and trying to get their baby back. Some cases, they even adopt the changeling, sort of, and it sort of becomes about the changeling growing up in the human realm. And then you got the flip side, where it's about the human baby growing up among all the fairies. There's quite a bit of diversity with all these stories. Now, the question that's probably on your minds right now is, why would fairies want to abduct humans? And the answer is, there's a lot of reasons. One legend goes is that the fairies owe a blood debt to the devil, and every 7 years they pay it in the blood of human babies. There's possibly also the reason that a human tried cheating a fairy on a deal, or maybe they got into a deal with a fairy that they shouldn't have, and now they've come to collect on it. Or maybe they thought it would be a funny prank to play on humans, or they're just dumping an unwanted child onto the humans. There's lots of reasons. All I can say is, when it comes to the Fae, they operate on a completely different sort of logic from us that's just not going to make sense. Now, something to keep in mind with mythology and folklore is that it's not created in a vacuum. It's always used to kind of explain away something that you see in the real world. So with that in mind, what is it that changelings are explaining? Like, this is sort of an irrational way of explaining something that's actually completely rational. One of the most commonly accepted theories is that changelings were sort of a way of explaining away things like physical deformities or neurodivergence. Examples being like, you had a child that was on the spectrum, but this was before, or like psychology was even a thing, or even like neurology. You guys get what I mean. This is in a very, very scientifically illiterate era. Well, if you get a child that seems born wrong or acts out of sorts, and you've got no other frame of reference to work off of except for all these old folk tales you've heard growing up, well, you're probably gonna default to, oh, that possibly can't be my baby, it's a changeling. I just want to put out this way, I'm not saying that any of that's okay, I'm just saying you sort of have to look at this in the context that it occurred in. this was, like I said, this was during a time where people were much more superstitious than they are now, and they just sort of came up with these very fantastical ways of explaining the world around them. And changelings, unfortunate as they are, were one such way. Now, the thing about changelings is that even though they are one of the most popular myths out of the British Isles, they actually don't have the same degree of pop culture penetration that you see from others like banshees. Like, for instance, as far as films go, there's like only two I can think of off the top of my head, and like there's the 2008 film Changeling, which stars Angelina Jolie, but the title is really more of a metaphor. There is another one from 1980 that stars George C. Scott. It is called The Changeling, but everything I've read points to it being more of a ghost story than a fairy story. Changelings have made appearances in shows like Star Trek Deep Space Nine and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, but they both play them off as shapeshifters rather than, being fairy creatures. Dungeons and Dragons even does this with their version of changelings as well. They're a race of shapeshifters that are descended from another race of shapeshifters called doppelgangers. They are a playable race, by the way. There's also White Wolf's games, Changeling the Dreaming and Changeling the Lost. These ones, they kind of pick and choose which elements of the folklore they want to use and try putting their own spin on it. There are probably two examples I can think of where it's a little bit more accurate to the folklore. One episode of Supernatural has some artistic license, but it does depict them fairly accurate to the lore. But as far as getting it dead on accurate, or rather about as dead on accurate as you can with this stuff, is Courtney Crumrin and the Night Things. So yeah, that is the basic gist on changelings. You think your baby's out of sorts? Well, it's probably because fairies kidnapped your baby and swapped in one of their own for it. Did you like the video? Leave a comment below, hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you want more, hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss an upload. If you want to support the Mythoverse, two best places to do it are our Patreon or buying our comics directly off our website. Either helps. And with all that, we'll see all you mythomaniacs next time.